Before I get into today's video, I hope you guys notice my new shirt kind of matches this cup. You know, it always helps to sell some things to your YouTube channel. So I think I look particularly good in this shirt, and maybe you could too. But, you know, if I happen to see you driving your Mercedes and wearing this shirt, it would make me really happy, especially if I'm not near the shop. Anyway, you can buy these things from us now, and we have other colors of shirts like 040 black and this nice 350H medium blue color that got rained on a second ago. Okay, well, without too much waiting, we're going to get into today's topic. And well, today's topic is a kind of a big deal. It's called "Who is the utmost classic Mercedes expert in the world?" So just to drop a couple of hints at the beginning of this video, it's not me, and I don't consider myself that person. Instead, we're going to go through and we're going to look at some people who are living. I'm not talking like if you're dead, thank you for your contribution. Please, hopefully, you know, you enjoyed doing this as a career. But we're going to focus on those that are alive and have done a lifetime of, you know, and some of the entities may be referred to as a complete and total business. So the first business or individual business that's been started by an individual that I want to mention is probably Oldtimer Restoration Center. Now, why do I want to mention Oldtimer? Well, Oldtimer was started by Jim Cosgrove. He has some other employees, Jeff, Aaron, probably some other ones that I don't know, but I consider Oldtimer to be the best Mercedes Benz shop, just like dedicated, restore your car, make your car perfect, bring your car back to factory original condition shop that I have interacted with. And one of the reasons that I've sort of have that opinion about them is because I've never heard a single bad thing, like a single complaint about their work, and I've never heard of an instance where if something went wrong during the restoration of a car that they haven't stepped up to the plate and honored their work and gotten to the bottom of the problem. And I think that sometimes being the best isn't just what you know, it's how you handle a situation where something doesn't go 100% right. So I consider them to be the probably the best shop you could get a Mercedes restored at least on the East Coast or in the continental United States. Now, another person I really look up to is my machinist, Jim. And I'm not going to give Jim's last name because Jim isn't technically in business anymore. He just does work for us. So he's the person that we send our engines to. But, you know, you become an expert the hard way. And Jim did it working, you know, really hard. 70, 80 hours a week building Mercedes engines and doing a really good job with them. You know, he'd have a 130 engine and he'd, you know, take everything apart, find where it failed and put it together so that it was 100% again. And one of the reasons that I hold Jim's work in such high regard is because years and years after I've met people, at least in our area, who have cars that have his engines in them, I find that those engines are in great running order, and sometimes they've sort of outlived their factory parameters simply because Jim paid such great attention to detail. There was just, you know, Jim would look at a range that he was given and focus on getting the optimal numbers within that range. And so while I know other machinists, his work has just proven itself to be outstanding work. Now, a third person that I consider to be a really knowledgeable entity in these cars that, I mean, again, I don't know what's involved in taking a car there, but another person who does really outstanding restoration work that I haven't met, but I sort of watch his work from afar and everything, is a guy named Scott Grunford. And Scott Scott used to contribute to the Mercedes Benz Club magazine quite a bit, and so I read all of his articles. He wrote a great article on discovering the last Gullwing and piecing it together. And Scott was so familiar with the 300 SL and so familiar with Mercedes from that era, like the 300S or the 300 SC Roadster, like just these very expensive 300 Adenauer Cabriolet, these very expensive complex cars from the era. And this sort of requires another type of knowledge. It doesn't, like, I have a lot of book knowledge about these cars. I can tell you what the engine displacement is on a M186 engine, but the thing is, I can't machine a crankshaft. Scott put together a company, and I believe he was capable of doing all of this stuff before he even put the company together, that was capable of restoring a 300 SL from start to finish, whether it was the engine and transmission or the body or the tube frame if it had been damaged. He has a great section in one of his articles where he talks about how to determine if the tube frame on a 300 SL has been damaged in an accident and poorly repaired. I mean, he had all of this stuff really figured out. And I think that after seeing his restorations 20 years or 30 years after the fact, they look like, especially these 30, 40-year-old restorations that Scott did, they look like they're not a day over 5 years old. I mean, he took such great care in every single aspect of the car. The restorations age almost like the factory product. And so, I think that I've never heard anything bad about Scott. He seems to have a lot of integrity. Sure, his work is expensive, but that's just comes with the territory of doing good work. Now, one of the things a lot of these people have in common is that they typically focus on pre-72 model year Mercedes. So Oldtimer doesn't work on newer cars. The same thing with Scott Grunford. Scott Grunford's not going to restore a 560 SL for you, but he will restore a 113, because it fits in that pre-72 timeline. And again, a lot of these shops are very exclusive. I imagine you have to wait a long time to get a car in there because completing a restoration takes a long time. You can't just have 10 cars you're working on, then just add an 11th car like it's no big deal. It's a very big deal. It takes a lot of planning, and the more I get into this, the harder it really is. Now, another shop that I have a lot of respect for that does just engines is Metric Motors. So, Metric is located in Canoga Park, California, making the distance from here to Canoga Park very, very cumbersome. I mean, it's just a lot of distance, but they do a great job rebuilding Mercedes engines. They're very detail-oriented. The staff there, especially Mike, is just, they just are happy to help you. They're not grouchy. They're not, everything is very clear-cut. Probably my favorite person in the classic Mercedes world that I've gotten to know, I think because he's such a larger-than-life character, is Gernold Nizzius. And so Gernold specializes in the W113 chassis. And so Gernold, I think, emphasizes drivability and usability with the cars he works on and restores. And I think that that's what makes him so great, that I see people out there using the cars that he's restored or rehabilitated. And I think that that's one of the reasons why Gernold is so highly regarded, because he has the ability to look at a 113, whether it's a 230 or 250 or 280 SL, and figure out where its deficiencies are and work through them methodically, and then create a car that actually runs and drives very well. And I mean, there's some other people too that I really like, that I hold in high regard. My friend Pete Van Rossum, Pete went from doing DOT certification to opening a shop, Silverstar Restorations Inc. up in North Carolina. Pete was one of those guys that had a dream, and he realized his dream of getting out of the South Florida rat race and being able to open a shop where, again, it's got to be pre-1972. But he's done a great job. Everybody likes his work. And that's really the highest type of praise you can get, that nobody's going around saying, oh, this person screwed me over, this person did a bad job. You never hear anything like that about Peter Gernold. Another person that I really like, who keeps a very low profile, is my friend Joseph Zangerl. I think I said his last name right. He lives up in North Carolina as well, up in the hills. And he's probably the only person who builds Mercedes Restomods that I like. So his work involves taking 60s Mercedes and upgrading their drive lines with 80s drive lines, which I think is ideal because he sort of takes the best, most attractive era it's and marries it to the best, most reliable Mercedes driveline engineering. And I think that's first of all, it's a lot of work. There's no easy way to get through it, but it's also the stuff he ends up with is great. He actually puts thousands of miles in his cars, like they're, like you're supposed to do. He has a little 190C with an M102 engine in it. He's put M103 engines in W108 chassis. I mean, it's a nice break from some of the difficulties and expenses that go along with restoring the mechanical package in a 60s car, which isn't a bad package, but were the M103 and later M117 engines better from a durability standpoint? Absolutely. They never have bottom-end failures for one. Anyway, if I didn't mention your name here, it's not because I don't consider you to be an expert. I just wanted to talk about some of the people that I think know more than me about the cars. And, there's some other people like my friend Kevin Tesler, or my friends Bobby and Pierre over in Sarasota that I didn't mention, that are really fantastic people. They've put together great businesses that restore these cars. And I've also mentioned people like my friend Jamie in other videos. So it should go without saying that I think extremely highly of Jamie, and I think very highly of a lot of people in this industry who may not be well recognized, like my friend Stuart, who runs the workshop at the Mercedes dealership in Jacksonville, or my friend Barron, who runs the other dealership workshop. So don't read into it like I'm forgetting about somebody deliberately. It's just there are a lot of you, and there are more of. My point is there are more people who do this stuff than people think that there are. Okay, well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the bell for notifications, and we'll see you in the next video. And don't forget to consider buying a shirt or a mug. Thanks.